Hey folks, Brandon Harrington here, host of Surviving the Music Industry. You should listen to what I tell you as your elder millennial. You should go visit americansongwriter.com/podcast to go check out all their other podcasts. You know why? Because we're family. I'm in the podcast network. Validation. Just warm and cozy hugs all around outside of a depression blanket. It feels so good. All right, let's do it. This is Surviving the Music Industry.
I didn't think about how that sounded.
Oh man, I don't know how much more I can take this, but here we are. It feels like a long time since I've done this. Welcome to Surviving the Music Industry. This is Brandon Harrington banging around in your eardrums right now. Welcome to my headspace in my life. This is a show where I have pretty gnarly conversations with creatives, people within music, because that's honestly kind of all I really care about. And so we sit down, we talk about their life, their troubled childhood. It becomes a therapy session. I've had people cry. It's not an abnormal thing on this deal that it happens. People have panic attacks revisiting the situation. It happens, people. I just kind of stumble through life trying to figure out what this music journey is, even for me. And right now, you're walking into my headspace, what's going on. So thanks for tuning in. Thanks for listening to Surviving the Music Industry. I don't know if you guys heard from the very tip top or the past couple episodes. We're part of the American Songwriter Podcast Network. Pretty happy about this because personally, that's validation, right? I mean, it's the closest thing I'll ever get to signing our record deal ever. I mean, I would come close to, like in bands, I mean, that was the situation. But personally, like, this is pretty validating stuff for me. So thanks for all that listen and kind of want to walk around in this journey of whatever this is, especially in my headspace. But I don't know, you guys really enjoy these honest and vulnerable conversations I have with guests. So Nikki Yanofsky is no different than any other episode, except we talk about her life and talk about her newest music. And we'll get to that. But I just wanted to let you guys know, if you're releasing a record during this whole pandemic situation, that's a tough situation. I totally understand. And that's tough. I have nothing but severe empathy during this crazy time to try to promote yourself and get out there, and you can't even play the new music that you love. But have you guys ever tried buying a house during this whole pandemic shit? Well, I certainly have, and I'm going through it right now. It's not the best, great, and headspace to do it. It's like, even our realtor agent, he's not really like taking it like serious. And so we're the aliens trying to step 6 feet away. And then he wants to like shake hands and tell me jokes and stuff. I don't know. It's just, it's not the thing. It's not the thing that you got to go into other people's houses and stuff. And you don't know how serious they're taking it, of course. And there's other people walking in the house. And me, I don't even understand what the situation is. You know, is it going to be on a doorknob? Do I got the Rona situation on a doorknob? And when I touch this doorknob, boom, Rona. Such a weird thing. I mean, we talked about this in the past before, like we're in the age of too much information. We just know too much and people are sharing way too much and it's not inaccurate. And it just clouds my judgment and my headspace. And this is where we are. But all that to say, my headspace is starting to get pretty cloudy because the situation in my life, we've been living in a rental like most people do in Nashville, because who can really afford to buy a house in Nashville? You guys should really check that out sometime. But then, and also they like hiked up the property taxes 34%, which is insane, especially living in the South. But anyway, that's adult stuff. All that to say, nobody really wants to live in Davidson County anymore. We've been living in a rental. They're kicking us out. And so we said, you know what? We can do it. Let's just go ahead and do it. So we bought a house. It was the third house we've seen. We got it. And we're approved doing that whole thing. And nothing's closed yet. I guess we're in the inspection stages right now. So they're going to go check that out. But all that to say, I am going to be moving soon. And, oh, man, just my time is wrapped up in that shit. So that's why, honestly, if you guys really keep up with me on social media, I haven't really been doing a lot of stuff because my headspace is just wrapped up taking care of the fam and doing the thing. You know, I want to get on social media, but is that the thing I need? That's something I've been evaluating here lately. The differences between a want and a need, and it's so childish and very elementary, right? And so analyzing that you need to take care of your needs before your wants. Something, I mean, I feel like I've been challenged in my life with, but it's something I haven't really discovered for myself until, you throw down hundreds of thousands of dollars on an investment. But then also the time management. Time is way more important to me than honestly a lot of money, because you can definitely not get that time back. But that's where I'm at. I would love to spend some time with you guys, like on social media. I would love to do more TikTok videos, as long as China doesn't steal my shit, or the Russians, whoever owns it. I think it's China. I don't know. And that even sounds racist to say something like that. But I don't even know what's going on there. So I'm afraid to even use TikTok. That's where I'm at, people. Anybody has any kind of insider judgment on that, I don't know, communicate with me. But I'm not leaving social media by any means. I'm not leaving the show by any means. But things are probably going to start slowing down, because I'm starting to contemplate taking like a 2 or 3 week break from the show, because it does take up a lot of time, and I got to move into a house. So I don't know. You guys let me know what you think, if it's okay for me to take about a 2 or 3 week break. Kind of figure that shit out. Keep up with us at Unofficial Brandon on the grams, even that TikTok. I haven't posted in a long time, except for show stuff. But keep up with us, communicate, slide in those DMs. Don't be creepy, though. I don't know. Maybe you could be creepy. I'll make fun of you, so you'll see what happens. But we also have other stuff at SMI Podcast. But you can go visit smipodcast.com and drop us an email. But we're on to Nikki Yanofsky. And so forewarning before jumping into this conversation, that we recorded this a while back in preparation for her album release. And at the time, it was called Black Sheep. I don't know what happened. I would love to know what happened. And so I would love to know the story even behind that. But it's not called Black Sheep anymore. And so we keep making reference to that. And it's just not the situation. And welcome. Things change, people. It happens all the time. It's not a big deal. It's kind of like wearing a mask. Things happen, things change. You got to be uncomfortable with the situation. But you know what? You got to deal with it and put on your mask. All right. That's your PSA for the moment right there. You're welcome. But anyway, the album has changed to turn down the sound. You should guys go check it out. Obviously, if you're fans of Nikki, you already know about it. That record came out not that long ago, just last week. But it's just been born. It's a little bitty baby. So you definitely got to go, if you're new and hip to Nikki. I think it's something that, and especially if you love pop music, if you love the styles and some of the thickness and the deepness of pop, from Michael Jackson to from the sounds of disco. I mean, we talk about these things and the people involved in the record and live, from Bruno Mars to whatever. I feel like you guys could definitely jump into this record. But a little note about Nikki is that she's been in the biz for a while. She hangs out with Quincy Jones, Rod Temperton. God rest his soul. We lost him a little bit back, but Rod was a huge songwriter. And I mean, I just have to say Thriller, and that should be good enough for you. But he was a staple. That's a name and a person I wish I got to know through this thing. And it's just too late. And that makes me pretty sad. But he was involved in Nikki's work. So I'm glad I got a little piece to get to know him a little bit. Nikki shared some insight he shared, and then also the making of the record. But we really start, you guys know about this thing. We start at the beginning with Nikki from Canada. Nikki's start of her career really started at the Montreal International Jazz Festival. And we got into it, people. We really got into some thick, heavy stuff, and I'm so glad we got into it. But the record is out, and you should definitely go check it out. The record, again, is Turn Down the Sound. Be sure to go visit her website. Go give her a follow at Official Nikki Y on her social platforms. Obviously, go to her website, NikkiYanofsky.com. Check out some updates. Looks like she got some tour dates up. Looking good. Something's positive happening in Canada. No surprise there. But anyway, let's go.
I don't know if it's a good thing or not, but not much has changed for me.
Yeah, I know. Every day is about the same.
Yeah, my day-to-day, since this whole quarantine thing started, I don't love going out that much on a good day. So honestly, not that my daily routine isn't so different, but I'm starting to go a little stir crazy now by now.
Yeah, this is what I've learned from you, listening to Black Sheep a little bit, the whole loner mentality, because I tell people I have this talent of ghosting people, and I feel like you're probably a casual ghoster too. Like you're happy to say, I'll pop in, I'll show up at the party, never show up, and you're totally cool with it. But now that you're just kind of stuck at home.
It's gotten to the point where like it's not even, I don't even pretend that I'm going to show. I'm just like, honestly, thanks for thinking of me, but realistically, I'm not coming.
I haven't got to that point yet. I mean, I've been let down.
It's liberating.
Oh, dude, like when you could let other people down and you hold on to it, you strong arm that letdown. You're Wonder Woman.
Yeah.
I love it. That's so good. All right, so I saw you're calling from Canada, at least on the phone. Is that where you're at right now?
Yeah, I'm in Montreal. That's where I live.
Yeah. So when you get ready to do these things, like, are you slobbing out, or do you like get dressed like head to toe, like on stage wear? Like, what's your vibe right now?
Well, currently I'm still in my pajamas. I did not get dressed yet today.
Okay.
But honestly, it depends on the day, because like I go through phases, especially with this. Like I just get sick of wearing sweatpants every day.
Mm-hmm.
So yesterday, for example, I actually put on jeans for the first time in like over a month.
Ooh, what does that feel
and
like?
Very, very uncomfortable and restricting.
Okay, the whole reason I asked, because I know that sounds like a creepy slide in the DM question, but I'm on the computer and I'm just going to type woman in pajamas, like Gap pajamas, and that's going to be your picture for me. So it feels like I'm talking to somebody like right in front of me. So
okay, love it.
Yeah, if you want to do that to me, you're welcome to type in Elijah Wood letting himself go, because that's kind of what I look like. So maybe it's Josh Gad. Like, just type in Josh Gad, and that's what it looks like right now. So we can just kind of feel like we're looking at each other. So Montreal, you said you live in Montreal. This is like home base for you. This is where you're from. This is where the family's at, huh?
Totally. Yeah, I'm born and raised here. I really love it here, I have to say. The only other place I could really picture myself living is New York City. But other than that, Montreal's really, it's got a lot going for it. I mean, of course, I'm biased because I have all my best memories growing up here, everything like that. But Canada's pretty awesome, and I'm really I'm proud to be Canadian. So it's like it's good.
100%. I have no qualms about Canada. You know, like there's maybe this impression like Americans think Canada's like the step little brother or something. I don't hold that against you, like at all. I think Canadians are pretty rad. One of my favorite songwriters is Canadian. He's awesome.
Who's your favorite songwriter?
Donovan Woods.
Yeah, for sure. I thought maybe you were going to say Leonard Cohen.
I'm okay with Leonard. No, I mean, if you're going to throw out the greats out there for sure. I mean, Leonard Cohen. Yeah. I feel like such an asshole now. Why didn't you say Leonard Cohen?
Because he's from Montreal. I thought that's where you were going.
No. Well, the other thing, too, I don't know much about Montreal. I mean, I've toured all over. I mean, Toronto might have to be the closest, but it's like a way different vibe, I'm guessing, than Montreal.
Yeah, totally. They say it's like New York and Paris had a baby. That's what Montreal is. Yeah, it's got a lot of culture. It's really, I don't know, it's really different. I have a lot of European flair, too, because it was built from a lot of the people that came from France came over to Montreal and founded it. So like all the architecture, everything is really old. If you go into old Montreal, it feels like you're just like somewhere in Paris. It's really cool.
Hopefully cleaner than Paris, though. People still throw shit and everything like out in the street in Paris. It's a beautiful city. Yeah. Okay, great. Perfect. That's what I wanted to know. Okay. All right. Home base. This is where family's from. So, and there's so many ties like to Montreal too, especially like music wise. I mean, the whole jazz scene, obviously. And of course, Canada has their whole thing. And this is your whole world too.
Well, the Montreal Jazz Fest is actually how I got into jazz to begin with, like how I got into singing. It was the first real show I did. So I owe so much to the city I'm from. I think that's probably why also I'm so committed to staying here and really, like I said, I'm really proud to be from here because they've supported me through everything. So this city really showed me what jazz is. I remember going to like the jazz festivals even when I was like, I was a really small kid, like from 7 years old to when I first performed and I was 12. So I had like a lot of my best memories, especially in the summertime, downtown Montreal, listening to amazing live performers. And the Jazz Fest here isn't like solely jazz. It's like they have everyone from Paul McCartney to Stevie Wonder. I mean, everybody comes and plays it. So it was really fun growing up with that.
Yeah, it's so... I wouldn't say it's different or it's weird, but I have to say it's pretty fascinating life to have like jazz introduced to you like at a young age. Like, what did your parents do? Tell me a little bit about your parents.
Well, my parents are they're amazing. They're super supportive and always encouraged me to be creative and go after my dream. But neither one of them are professional musicians. My dad plays piano. My mom, I call her like a bathroom singer. Like she'll sing in the shower and that's about it. But she has a nice voice. But I grew up with so much music, just always around my house. My dad was into like all the dad bands, Steely Dan, Doobie Brothers, like all like this thing. Like
He's such
rock.
a dad, 100%.
Yeah, totally. The Eagles, that was my first concert I ever saw with my parents. So yeah, like a lot of classic rock, but also a ton of Motown. Like my dad was a really big fan of like Stevie and, Donny Hathaway, Marvin Gaye. Like I grew up with a lot of Aretha, and those were like my first influences. The first time I ever heard anyone sing and I was like, oh, I want to try and do that was really Aretha Franklin. And then when I started doing shows around my hometown here, I was doing like a lot of charity shows when I was 11 years old, 10 years old. And then at one of the shows that I was performing at, the founder of the Montreal Jazz Fest was there, and he asked if I wanted to come open up the festival. So that was like my first really big, legit show was the Montreal Jazz Fest. And that's why I even got into jazz, because I remember saying to my parents, if I'm going to play a jazz fest, I should probably learn some jazz. So I typed in on, I think iTunes or Google, one of the two, jazz. And the first thing that popped up was Ella Fitzgerald and Louis Armstrong. And I heard Ella Fitzgerald's voice, and that was it. It was game over for me. I was just completely obsessed. There was something about her tone. And I don't know, I think listening back to her now, she has such a youthful quality that I'm sure I connected with at that age.
Yeah.
I'm sure that's what it was that really spoke to me,
Yeah.
So yeah, that's how I got into it.
I understand that too, because Ella has like such an amazing, distinguished voice. Like any of those like classic voices that you could throw out there. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, well, I know who that is because like it's this and it means that much to me. But she's definitely like one of those iconic voices that propelled the genre and just even herself as a talent. Like it's insane.
Yeah, she was so incredible.
Yeah.
To this day, I mean, like I never get sick of listening to her. I'll put on an album of hers anytime, and it always puts a smile on my face and really brings me back to my childhood. So cool that music can do that.
Yeah. All right, so I knew that the Jazz Fest situation was pretty young. You said like 12, somewhere around there, 12 or 13. So like all the way up to that point, like what kind of kid were you? I mean, were you just like an alien savant, like in music, like you were just doing the thing? Or like, were you like a pretty normal kid? Like what was the thing for you?
I was definitely weird.
Okay.
I was definitely weird. Yeah, not normal. I wouldn't say I was normal. I was, I don't know. I always felt different since I was really small. I didn't have a lot of friends, and I was just really into music. Like music was the only thing that made me feel better, and I really connected to it. And but I was never like down about like being a little bit more, isolated, I guess, and feeling different. I kind of embraced it always. I was always really taught to kind of accept who you are. I think it's like a credit to my parents. My brothers are the same way. It's just like, the things that make you different is what sets you apart, and you have to hold on to it and not try and blend in. It's good to have something that makes you a little different. And I was watching, actually, I found all these old home videos. I'm sure so many people are doing that in quarantine. They're kind of going back down memory lane. And I found this old documentary that was being made of me leading up to my first Jazz Fest. It was these two college kids that asked to do a story on me. And we said, sure, why not? And I was watching back on so much of that, the interviews and all that stuff I did I don't even remember any of it when I was 12. And I'm the same. It's so funny. Like I was very in your face and, unapologetic, and just, I feel like so much has changed, but so little has changed. I feel very connected to like who I was even back then,
Yeah. Or there's like as a kid, like there's no anxiety. Like, you know what I mean? Like there's just, there's no filter in your brain of like, well, this would be socially awkward if I'm just dancing right in front of your face.
Yeah, that's funny. I don't know. There's just like, there's something about it that just like, I don't know, watching those videos, like I said, like, I feel like you said, you sort of become aware after that. And then you realize, oh, maybe I shouldn't do this because it'd be socially awkward, or this would be weird. And like, there's just a filter that does not exist yet. And then you go through that phase where it's like you're hyper aware of it, like when you're a teenager and all you care about is how you're coming off and, what people think of you. And then I feel like as you get into your 20s, like where I'm at right now is I'm almost reverting back to the original me of just like not really caring that much anymore.
Oh, dude, you're talking to an elder millennial right now. So it's like you go through cycles, I feel like you get to this point of, okay, I'm hyper aware, like I'm maybe a little socially awkward right now, but then you get to a point 5 years down the road, well, fuck it. I'm just going to do whatever I want to do because this is me. But then in some little way, you might take 2 steps back. To me, at least for me, like it goes in cycles. But it sounds like you're on the upswing of things, which is great.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I think this album, like this upcoming album I had, really helped me tap into that, like the core and what I really of me and really what I want to be, and not just be a puppet for someone else to sing through. And I'm really just making music that I want to make rather than like what I think is expected of me, which is something I struggled with after starting so young. It's like you have so many older people that you think know best, and then you sort of reach the age that they were. You're like, wait a minute, maybe they didn't know anything,
Right. Yeah. All right. So I want to learn more about family stuff. Yanofsky, right? So is it Polish?
It's Russian, actually.
It's Russian?
Yeah, my Russian, but I'm 4th generation Canadian. My family originally came from Kiev, it's in Ukraine. But I'm Jewish, and we weren't really welcome then at that point. So my great ancestors, they fled and came to Montreal, came to Canada, and I'm 4th generation Montreal. Yeah,
a super scary time for the Jewish community. Pretty big Jewish community in Montreal, huh?
Yeah, very big influence too on like the culture and the food. Like we're known for like some of the things in cuisine that we're known for, like is like smoked meat, and like Schwartz's Deli is like a big thing here. But there's a lot of for sure, a lot of Jewish influence here.
Okay, all right. So you discover music, home life is normal. You got kids and mom and dad. Things seem pretty happy, except for this little alien brain that you kind of got going on. Like you're you're loving music, because I feel attached to that too. I mean, I was definitely like a strange kid, the black sheep, if you will, if I can go ahead and implement that. Because I guess like kids that kind of tune into the arts a little bit more, see things a little bit differently, and so it's really hard to connect with different kids.
Yeah,
too.
It is. I felt much more connected to like adults. Like my friends were always a lot older than I was because of that. I completely agree with that.
Yeah. Well, and it seems like too, just even like, just scanning over like history stuff too. I mean, you started at the Montreal like Jazz Festival like at like 12 or 13, but I mean, would you say like that's where the professional career started, or did it start before that?
I think professional, like, on a more world stage, it was definitely around then. Before then, I was begging my parents to let me kind of start, and they're like, you're too young. And then you can only say that for so long, like I probably was still a little too young when I first started out, but I looking back on the type of kid I was and what my parents, had to kind of like go through with me, it's almost like they held off as long as they possibly could, because I was just like, I needed to start.
Was it a thing of like with your parents too? Was it a thing of like, because child stars, kids in music, I mean, it wasn't a new thing. I mean, we're talking like early 2000s, you know what I'm saying? So was it a thing of like protection? Was it a thing of like, maybe she's just not ready mentally? Like what was the thing in their headspace? I think
so. Well, the thing is, my parents always treated me like, they didn't really treat me like a kid ever. There was always like a mutual respect that I had, so, but also they definitely knew best. And so I think it was just a protection thing of like, okay, we want her to have as normal of a childhood as she possibly could have. But I think when they started seeing that I wasn't really having a normal childhood anyway, because I felt so different from everyone else, and this was like the one thing that gave me peace and gave me happiness, it's like, how could they say no at that point,
Yeah. Especially if you're cranking up like the stereo, like in your bedroom, like maybe you're doing karaoke or something like it. You can't ignore it. Like you can only shove it down for, so long.
For sure.
So like, did they do like piano lessons or anything, or try to nurture that?
Yeah. When I was little, when I was like in kindergarten, because my dad is a pianist, like he's like, oh, maybe my kids will want to play piano. But he grew up playing and having kind of being forced to practice in a way, because it was like the older mentality, his mom was like, no, we're paying for lessons, you better practice, kind of thing.
Ruler across the hands kind of thing.
Yeah. So but he really didn't want to implement that on his kids. So like I would go to lessons and fall asleep on the bench. And then like after a certain, like I was in kindergarten, I was way too young, I would be so bored, I'd fall asleep on the piano bench. So I got kicked out of my piano school, but then I would play by ear, as I got older. And I remember I started taking piano lessons again, maybe when I was like 7. And my piano teacher would give me like a music chart to read, trying to read notes. And I would listen to it in the lesson, and then I'd go home and I would never practice it. But then I would have my lesson the week later, and she'd be like, okay, let's hear what you learned. And I would pretend like I was reading it, but I had just remembered it by ear, like from hearing it in the lesson. So I would just like play it back to her. And I remember I would like close my eyes and move my head as if I was like Beethoven or something. She's like, are you really connecting to the music like that? And I'd be like, yeah, totally. And it was like, it was an act.
Teachers are so stupid. But there's a moment I feel like in your parents' head that says, okay, she's ready. Like what was that thing? I mean, was it the thing of, oh, she sounds like she could be ready, or we just have this opportunity that landed on us? Like what was the thing that said, okay, this is the time?
I think it was more an organic thing. It wasn't like a specific aha moment where they're like, okay, yeah, now let's do it. Let's pursue it. It just kind of fell into our laps. Like I was doing, like I said, some charity shows around Montreal. And like when that thing happened where like the founder heard me and offered me this thing, it's like it couldn't say no at that point. It was just an opportunity of a lifetime. And it was just such a fun thing for me and to be able to do, that, they're like, all right, let's just give this a shot. It's in our hometown. And yes, it's in front of like 100,000 people, but
yeah, right.
At least it's like she doesn't have to go anywhere for it. She can kind of rehearse here and see how it goes. And it went really well. And that was like the first, thing that kind of caught the attention, I think, of the music industry in a way. Like that's where I got in touch with Ramone who ended up going on to produce my first album. And from Phil, I met Quincy and Rod Temperton, and a lot of my mentors. Had I not done that first show, like none of this would have happened. So it was definitely the culprit for sure.
Yeah, right. It seemed like the jazz festival that year, I'm getting like around 2005, 2006, if I'm doing the math right. Like it was like it started this domino effect. But then it's also like, validation. This feels kind of good. Like, and then all these other things just start kind of popping for you. Yeah,
I think my age almost worked to my advantage at that point, because when you're so young, you're just naive. Like I didn't know how serious the opportunities I was getting were. I was just like, I would meet every opportunity with like the amount of hard work I needed, but also just an excitement and like almost an ignorance in a way, but ignorance is bliss. And I just had fun with every single thing. And that's like a mentality that I don't think I would have been able to get had I started later, So in a way, like starting that young was a big plus for me, because I still keep that in mind when I meet, a lot of my idols and people I've been really fortunate enough to be able to work with. Like I go into every opportunity with that same excitement, and the same thing of like, if I could do this when I was that age, then who's to say I can't still do it now? Like the nerve sort of went away because of that,
Yeah, being a kid and like being launched on a stage like that, I think it's pretty rad too. Like especially you doing this as a kid. Maybe there's like this thing of like, I don't know if you met Quincy there, but let's say like Brubeck or something. Like you met Herbie Hancock there or whoever, and it's just kind of like, oh, okay, I've heard this dude. As a kid, it's not like, oh, that's Herbie Hancock, or is it like that for you? Like, did you know like?
No, it was.
Oh, okay, yeah.
It was, yeah. I remember I met John Hendricks of Lambert, Hendricks and Ross, who like many people wouldn't even really know who that is, because they're like the original vocalese group, huge in like the 50s, 40s, like really basically like the grandpa of jazz and vocalese especially. Like he was like the original who did that. And I was freaking out. I must have been like 14 years old, and I was like on the verge of tears just meeting this guy. Most people my age probably at that point would have no idea who that was. But no, it meant a lot to me. I cared more about meeting legends like that in terms of just like excitement and really looking up to them than probably any pop star that was big at that time.
I mean, after you did the Montreal like Jazz Festival, was it kind of like, oh, well, now I'm set? Or was it like back to reality for you?
I actually went to summer camp the next day.
Yeah.
I had to like miss going to camp to play the Jazz Fest. Like the day that camp started was the day. So I literally drove up the next day and went to sleepaway camp for like 2 months, and then came home. So no, it was definitely back to reality. I took everything in stride, I think, when I was younger though. Like it didn't get to me. It didn't give me any type of like big head or anything. It was just like, I was just happy to have the experiences and like kind of move on, you know?
Yeah, it feels like when you're looking at the timetable, it's just kind of like, well, it's like normal steps. You know, a couple years later, you record like on Verve Records kind of thing, and you connect with those people. So it's not like you did the festival and then boom, you're Miley Cyrus and you have a drug addiction and like you're just going crazy at this point, you know?
No, definitely not. Definitely not. I did the We All Love Ella thing for Verve about like 6 months later, I'd say, when I was 13 at that point. And that's where I met Tommy LaPuma, who produced that track, Airmail Special. And then it's actually a funny story, but Tommy produced it, and then Phil Ramone was mixing the album, and he heard my track. He was like, "Who is this? Who is this kid?" And then that's how he heard of me. And then from there, he was like, "I want to do your first album with you." So he was responsible for my first worldwide release, because that Airmail Special bonus track that I did on We All Love Ella, that was only supposed to be in Canada. And then Phil heard it and was like, "No, this has to be on the US release too." So that was because of Phil that I had my first song out in the world. And then, we went on to do that first album together. It was such an amazing experience, and he really helped give me the confidence to write my own stuff and not just be kind of pigeonholed into like a cover jazz singer, because I was too young and I had too much to say to do that, you know.
Yeah. So like at this point, like you're just a kid, and maybe you have like something in your brain of like you want to put your own voice on something, but people are feeding you like do these jazz standards. Like it's already been done. This will work. Do this. But Phil is saying, "Oh, you got more in you. Like write some songs like you're feeling," kind of thing.
Phil was really into the creative and what I would have to say. He's like, you know, there's so many people that have sung this already, like. And the novelty of it was that I was young and like, oh, it's interesting to hear a 13-year-old sing these songs. But it's like it becomes almost like a circus act at that point. And he never wanted that to be the case. He wanted me to be a credible artist and really understand my own voice and what I wanted to say. That first album, Nikki, it was a self-titled release. That was the first time that I was really encouraged to do that. I mean, I was writing songs since I was in kindergarten, but Phil really gave me the confidence to be able to actually record them. And he was just the sweetest man, and he was such a great supporter and friend to me for, you know, until he passed away. But he was just he was really an amazing man, and I definitely would not be where I am without that experience and that album and working with him.
Yeah, his credits are crazy across the board. I mean, anything from like Bob Dylan to B.B. King. I mean, I don't know, Stevie Wonder. Like, it's insane, like, that guy's output. But him having the peripherals and that insight is pretty insane, too. Because I'm thinking just, you know, early 2000s, like, I feel like most record labels are like the people in the suits are just like, oh, what's going to be the kid that's going to be the next thing, you know? Like the Taylor Swift mentality, you know what I mean? So, like, we're just going to mold and fold this thing. But it seemed like he, like, really guided you like down this creative.
Yeah, he let me figure it out.
Yeah,
he let me figure it out for sure.
Yeah, I think I don't want to pass by this too. I kind of mentioned it earlier, but something Herbie Hancock is like a little bit before or around this time too. Like
it was around then.
Yeah, Stomping at the Savoy, because I feel like this is an introduction for you, maybe like creativity, like in the workflow, but also with will.i.am as well, and that's a little bit of a crossover from jazz. Maybe this is like the beginning stages of like a crossover mentality for you, maybe?
Yeah, it's actually interesting because I feel like people have a need to almost put you in a box,
right?
You know, it's like if you're a little different or if you're not like a straight ahead genre, they're like, oh, well, we need to be able to define you so we can market you and like, you know, say exactly define what you are in 5 words or less. And it's just like, musicians it's hard to pigeonhole a musician like that, you know, and that's why like working with Phil was such a great and liberating experience, because the original songs on my first album, Nikki, are not jazzy at all. They're kind of all over the place, to be honest. You know, it's from a mind of a kid at that point. So I have like half the album was standards, and then all the original songs were like everything from like folky stuff to like blues to, there was like so much random songs kind of on there that didn't really go together, but it still worked somehow. But that's why I always find it kind of funny when people are like, oh, like you were this jazz singer. Like jazz is definitely my roots, but I was never ever a straight ahead jazz singer, even for my first album, you know?
Yeah, right.
And then my second album, Little Secret, like that also is like fully jazzy pop. And then I realized, I'm like, why did I call it jazz pop? Because there's literally a genre for that, and it's called R&B. Like that's what R&B is. It's like jazz, pop, and soul put together. So
I love that. Yeah,
funny.
I always laugh, especially when I get pitches. That's really aggravates me too, is that when we're trying to like figure out like what this thing is, and you want to package it and you want to put it out in the market, well, why do you have to put a name on it? Like why can't it just be rock and roll? Why can't it be just R&B? Why does it have to be like jazz pop influenced by vocal jazz or whatever?
Totally. I know. But that's why at a certain point I just stopped trying to correct, you know, how people perceive me, because that's just an impossible thing. People see you the way they want to see you, and you just got to keep doing you and keep doing the music that makes you happy and really speaks to your core and speaks to your soul, and let that kind of do the talking for you. You don't have to, you know, have a commentary or like notes for every song. Oh, this one was influenced by this and for that. And oh, it was about this one moment in my life, and this riff comes from here. It's like, just let it breathe and let it be. You know, I think that's really the approach that I definitely take with my music, even in terms of being in the studio and working on this album. Like, I didn't put too much pressure on needing it to sound a certain way. I was just like, I just want to write from the heart and write something that's honest and authentic, and have that be the common denominator and the common thread that makes this album cohesive. And it really works, because I guess a lot of the songs and the melodies that come from the heart and are honest you end up pulling from your influences anyway. So you end up having this unique sound that all goes together, because you're kind of painting from the same palette, you know?
Yeah. And I think a lot of that stems from like that box mentality. To me, when I hear that, or especially on this level of like at anybody's career, it's kind of like, well, we got to package this on the marketing side, because you only have like this 1 second impression. And what are they going to see? And then what are they going to gravitate toward? Like, it's funny to me, because like we're human beings, and that we are so dimensional. It's not, you know, an or world. It's kind of an and. Why can't I be this thing and this thing and this thing? Why does it have to be this one thing? And it's funny, like when we're all working in entertainment, that when we talk to a publicist or we talk to a manager, and they kind of force you down this, but like, I feel like in our hearts, it's like, this doesn't feel good. Like, I don't like this box.
Exactly. I know. I've definitely gotten that. I totally relate to that, especially like starting out so young. It's almost like people make up their minds about what you're going to have to turn into for you before you even get a chance to do that and find your own voice and find your own sound. And have your own experiences too. You know, it's like, oh, I was this happy kid, so that means that my music always has to be happy-go-lucky and fun and bright.
Right.
And,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm definitely that way still. I think like I said, like I definitely relate to how I was when I was 12. Even now, you know, being 26, I'm still very optimistic and you know, very like smiley, happy, good mood. Like my disposition is generally happy. But I have my moments, I have my days, I get in funks just like anybody else. And it's like, I want to be able to write about that without being, you know, already kind of typecast as a certain way.
Right. Yeah. And this is the only reason we're talking about it, because just from the standards and the impression and the patterns that have been done before. But I think the variable for you, one, it either could be your brain, like you were just set on your way, like you just wanted to do things your way as a kid. But I feel like Phil being that calibrator as well, when Phil Ramone kind of ended your life and said, no, like here, like you strive for this creative passion or path that you're kind of walking down on. Because, I mean, especially when he's in a career-wise, like artist thing, you don't get that as a kid, like because they're molding you and kind of telling you what to do.
Yeah, it's always the industry side, but any creative that I've worked with has always encouraged me to be different. Like Phil was one. Quincy Jones always told me, decategorize music. You know, make your own thing. Everything's already been done before. Yeah. You know, it's like, and that's such a true statement. I mean, like everything that is possibly out that we have ever heard is because that exists already. So the only thing that you can bring to the table is something different and unique, and that's you, and that's what sets you apart. So lean into that and don't try and sound like everyone else. Really find your own thing and, become who you're supposed to be, not, what everyone's telling you you're supposed to be. And he was so influential for that too. And like always told me, I hear you singing funk. You shouldn't just, do the straight ahead jazz stuff, get into like R&B, get into funk, soul, and your voice sounds so great on that. Like he always encouraged me to do that. So having someone like Quincy in your corner, it overpowers any type of industry or more suit type.
Dude,
that's like, no, you have to be
kidding.
doing, Yeah.
Quincy said it. It's going to happen. Yeah, when I talk to people that kind of hang out with Quincy, they always have this thing too. Like, I feel like, and I had this impression that Quincy, and maybe it's like this old man mentality, when you hang out with old people, they're just kind of like, well, I'm just going to tell you whatever I want because it doesn't matter. I'm old. What are you gonna do?
Yeah.
But I feel like Quincy like does that. Like he sees something and he'll just tell you like what it is.
Yeah, but I don't know if that's because of age or not. I think Quincy was always that way. That's why he's so successful, because people really go to him for his honesty, and he never had a filter. He'll tell you like it is always. I've heard stories of from Quincy and also from Rod Temperton, he wrote Thriller, Off the Wall, Rock With You. He did all those songs with Quincy, and he was also my mentor and like taught me everything I know about songwriting. But the two of them, if you hear them talk about their relationship, like Rod was always like, the reason why it worked is because both of us were painfully honest, and we never wasted any time beating around the bush. It was always like if something was bad, we're like, no, that's rubbish, or like that's shit, throw it out, and like okay, and they would start over. There was no ego. They knew that they were both working towards a common goal, which was just great music, and they trusted each other. And that's what Quincy is to me too, and what Rod was to me too. I remember. And yes, does it hurt at first? Like I remember I once sent a song to Rod because I would send him every song I was ever working on, and he would help me work through it and give me feedback of how to shift it or change it or whatever it was. But I'll never forget, for the most part, he liked what I was writing. But one time I sent him a song and he was like, this is rubbish. I hate this song. And just matter of fact like that. And I was like, I listened and I was like, okay, no problem. And I remember hanging up the phone and being like heartbroken from it because I felt like, oh no. But then I realized that he respects me enough to be honest. And that's all that matters. And you find people who can have no filter. And like, that's to this day what I look for whenever I work with anybody new. And working on this album with my producers, Zach and Roger, like this is the first time we worked together. But the reason why I love working with them so much, from that very first session, it was completely transparent. Like it was just honest, and there was no egos, and it was easy. And that's something I learned from Quincy and from Rod.
Yeah. So working with Quincy and Rod, like at an early age. Well, first of all, before I go to this, though, because I also know this about Quincy too. Dude hangs out like with everybody, like you name it.
Yeah.
And I feel like the dude just has like tons of secrets, because I know if I was hanging out with Quincy, I'd be like, so bro, who killed JFK? Like, tell me all about it.
Yeah, he'll tell you.
Oh man, 110%. Like, did you have any of that stuff hanging out with him?
No, I'm just joking.
Oh man.
Yeah, no, but he definitely, the thing is, everyone categorizes it as secret because like, oh, hush, don't talk about that. But like Quincy wouldn't think. I mean, I don't know about the JFK thing. I've never heard him talk about that. But like, he talks about all kinds of stuff. He just sees people as they are, which is just like everyone's the same. Everyone puts their pants on one leg at a time. Like he's open and nice and gives everybody the time of day. He's really, really something. That he's such a special character, such a special guy.
Yeah, I feel like just even the creative force, like even from Rod to Quincy. I mean, any of those guys that worked on those early records, from MJ, like all the way from like the disco era, like those dudes just knew what was happening, like with groove and with rhythm and like tone. They just knew. I feel like they just had an ear for what the public wanted before the public even wanted it.
Yeah, because they were driven by quality and not by the next trend. They were always driven by hooks and quality and making sure that, I mean, one thing Rod always taught me with songwriting was this technique called prosody. And the way he described it is when lyrics clothed the melody perfectly. It was a perfect fit. There was not one word out of place, not one syllable that sounded awkward or you wouldn't pronounce a word like that in real life. And he also always told me that every single part in the song needs to have its own hook. It needs to have its own thing that works well. So like if you listen to Thriller, for example, which is like his Rod's biggest song, but you can identify it from the chorus that everybody knows. But also if I were to come up to you and be like, what song is this? ba-do-do-do-do-do.
Right.
Da-do-do-do-do-do. You would know in 1 second that's Thriller, So that was Rod. All his songs have that, every single one. And I always try and keep that in mind when I'm writing.
Yeah, that's such a challenge too. Like when you try to like come up with these multiple parts that just are instantaneous, like hooky. Because for those guys, like it just seems like magic. It's just kind of like, oh, these dudes just knew what it was and they laid it down and that was it. But I'm sure it was a process at a time. But dude, that's just magic.
No, Rod worked at it for hours.
Right.
He worked at it for hours. What sounds so simple and effortless took him hours to get. I mean, I'm sure sometimes he would just have it a line in his head, like anyone, and just like go and write. And his mind was wired differently, and he just had that was his talent. But he's definitely. I mean, I've worked with him on songs for hours and hours and hours. Just sitting in the studio and he doesn't ever lose patience. He just sits there. He could sit and staring at a page for 8 hours, or staring at the piano keys for 8 hours until he comes up with something that is somewhat good. And even if it's good, he'll still keep going. He's like, "That's my first good idea. Now let me get 3 more and then compare." So he was like, he wasn't lazy. There was no shortcuts in getting that quality. And that's why it stands the test of time. I mean, he had Heatwave.
Yeah.
He was in Heatwave for years and years and years. He wrote every single one of their songs. I mean, that discography alone must be hundreds of songs. And for every song you hear, there's 4 that didn't make the cut.
Right.
So like he's definitely put in like his 10,000 hours in writing and then some. He's amazing. One of the greatest to ever do it. He always called me Wobbles. That was his nickname for me, which is also like on my album. I have 2 songs written by him. One he wrote for me, and one we wrote together. So the song Bubbles, Rod wrote for me, and he wrote it because Bubbles kind of sounds like Wobbles, which is what he used to call me. So there's like kind of funny little, little funny things to learn on that album. And then Turn Down the Sound we wrote together. Yeah. And that took hours until I would throw out a line and he'd be like, "No, that's not good enough,"
So what would like for his mind when you're working with him, what would be the thing of like, "Oh, that's not good enough"? I mean, I know there's multiple factors in that, but I mean, like to him, like what was the thing of like, "Oh, that's it. That's the magic."
I think it's like that thing I was talking about before. It's prosody. And when you hear it, you know it. Like, it's when a word is sung exactly as you would say it, and you almost don't even notice the lyrics. That's how wound they are with the melody and how perfectly they fit. And the greatest example of this, especially in Rod songs, there's a song that he has from Heatwave called "Star of a Story." And that song, the lyrics and the melody, you could barely hear what the lead singer is saying. That's how perfect it is. Cause it makes the voice almost just sound like another instrument. And so it was a mix of that, but also like he had a really hilarious process of writing. I remember I would be talking to him and he'd be like, "Wait, Wobbles, write this down." I'm like, "What?" He's like, "Greasy spider with a shot glass in his hand." I'm like, "What?" He's like, just write it. Just write it. I'm like, "Okay." And then we keep talking and he'd be like, "Oh, wait, write this now. Write this. You ready?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "All right. Got a job description. He's a mojo man." And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "Don't worry about it. Just write it down." And then we'd come back later and he'd play a song he was working on. And he's like, "All right, so those funny lyrics I gave you before, now find words that sound like that, but make sense."
Yeah.
So he led with vowel sounds, with consonants, and making sure that things sound good so he would start with gibberish completely. It makes absolutely no sense. But he's like, "Okay, now replace these words so they actually say something."
But it was
and
smooth.
That's sound
you know what I'm
track.
saying? Like it just felt good, like when it rolls out of your mouth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's insane. I do that all the time, but most of the time it's gibberish at 3:00 in the morning, and a couple of tequilas. So I need to start writing that shit down, I guess. No, I mean, that totally makes sense. Like if you look at any of those like disco tracks from like Heatwave, like that he's done, or any of his catalog, it's like, oh man, that just feels good. Like even you just saying like job description. What'd you say? Job description. What'd you say?
He's a mojo man.
He's a mojo man. I'm just thinking, oh shit, that line alone is kind of cool. Just stand alone by itself. But then I feel like he would say, "Oh no, there's something smoother. There's something cooler, like behind that."
Yeah, I mean that makes no sense really, But it's just the words sound good, and then he would be like, "Okay, now find a word that sounds like mojo but actually means something," or instead of man, say like and, or just like something with that vowel sound, the consonant sound, and the same rhythm to it, and the same cadence, but just like actually saying something. So that's what happened with "Turn Down the Sound," and that song we have on my album. You hear like the chorus, like it goes, turn down the sound. And like it sounds so perfect with the melody because that was Rod's trademark, you know?
Yeah, dude, that's insane. I feel like he was a wizard, like with melody too. Or was that something like he always brought to the table? Oh, okay.
No, he did everything. He was like, the melody was so deliberate. Not one ad lib out of place. You know, usually I'm very creative in the studio. I go in and I'll sing a verse and then I'll sing it 10 different ways another time just to have some comps to be able to play with, you know, and be like, okay, let's try this line here, this melody here. Rod would go in and be like, no, sing this here exactly like this. And I'm like, and then he would go, okay, now this line. And then at the end of it, you'd have like a crazy pack of harmonies that I didn't even know existed, you know?
Right.
And like he everything was mapped out. I mean, he looked at it like a puzzle. The way I always describe Rod's writing and why it's different, I think, to so many other writers and why he's one of the greatest to ever do it is because when you look at like a block of marble, you just see a block of marble, right? When Rod looks at a block of marble being a song, right? When Rod looks at a block of marble, he sees David. Like he's able to etch away and make something so crazy that we just didn't even know was in there. That's what he does. He doesn't stop until every single line, every single part is perfect. I mean, the amount of time and also just the amount of respect that I have for Rod is like, it's endless.
Quincy, Rod, they've been all like a little big pieces like scattered throughout your life. And Rod, he passed away not that long ago, right?
Yeah, he passed away, and it doesn't feel so long ago, but it was actually already in 2016, so it is 16. Kind of getting there now.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, they were like pretty big, influential from like Little Secret to like Solid Gold EP. Like they were still kind of a little bit behind the scenes, like writing some songs with you, doing the co-write thing. Is that true?
No co-writes there, but Little Secret. Quincy and Rod both exec produced that. Yeah. And Quincy got the executive producer. Like I thanked him he got the credit obviously on the album, but it's on the liner notes, A Little Secret. I wrote a whole thing to Rod because I tried to make Rod an executive producer. I said, okay, I want to put your name. And he's like, in true Rod fashion, he was like, everyone called him the Invisible Man. He had zero ego, didn't care about credit, nothing like that. He refused. Like he was like, no, it's fine. You don't have to put my name. You don't have to. And I needed to do something. So I wrote him a whole thank you, basically saying that he did, you know,
wow.
I couldn't have made that album without him. Yeah.
Yeah. That has to show you like a testament of that dude. Like he was just like, no, I'm good. But it's also the thing of like, no, I'm good.
Yeah. He was just like, he didn't care about any credit or anything like that. He just like, he let his music speak for him. And like, I remember once I was actually with Jacob Collier, and I was with Rod and Jacob, and we were going to London to record something at Jacob's house. And we took like the tube, as they call it there, whatever, the subway system there. And me and Jacob were cracking up. They're like, this guy's so low key. Like if anyone knew that they were sitting next to the guy who wrote Thriller, I think that they freaked out, you know? And like, he just looks like such a normal guy just sitting on the train waiting to, you know, to get off just like everybody else. But that's like how he saw himself too. Like he was just such a regular, nice guy that just like, he just happened to be successful in music, you know?
Yeah. Oh, that's my sweet grandpa. No, he has like 40 yachts. Like, bro, you have no idea, bro. That's amazing.
Uncle Roddy. That's what I call it. That's what like a nickname was, yeah.
That's amazing. That's a beautiful relationship. It really is. And like the more I kind of do this thing, it's kind of like, it's the people in this thing. You know, like the music is cool and it's gnarly, but then it's those relationships and those things that you build like along the way. So it sounds like Rob was definitely part of that in your life.
Yeah, he was like, I always say it's kind of funny to say it because like he was so much older than I was, but like he was honestly one of my best friends. I spoke to him like at least once or twice a week on the phone for like an hour. You know, like we spoke all the time. And whenever I'd go to the UK, like him and his wife, Kathy, would have me stay at their house. And I would like, you know, just chill there for like a week writing with Rod. Like it was just some of the best moments and memories I'll ever have. And I always said that like, even if all this goes to shit and like nothing happens with this upcoming album or whatever, it doesn't get as big as obviously everybody hopes their album does. Like at least that's worth it. That relationship alone is worth everything, you know?
Yeah. There's something about this record that, and especially Rod still has like a little like sauce on it too from Bubbles, Turn Down the Sound. Like I feel like even Nerve as well. Like there's something about Nerve. It's like, oh, it feels like Rod, but I guess maybe
I'm happy you say that. I wrote that song after Rod passed away as like my homage to him. So I'm happy that you picked that up.
Oh, dude, 110%. Like, I just feel like that bass line, like that Louis Johnson kind of thing from those Michael Jackson records. It just has that groove. And It just has that flavor, that melody sauce. Like, it was just kind of like, how is this not like a Rod tune? But it was more of an homage to him.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Especially lyrically, it's about someone who's just too cool for school, like doesn't give a shit, and that was like fully Rod.
That like
lyrically,
cool.
it's about him a bit, yeah.
I love that, yeah. And I wonder if you think this way, like progressively, like creatively, like when you go out for a record, there is like this common thread, at least to me, of like, oh, the black sheep is the thread. But what is the black sheep like for you?
Yeah, well, it's funny because the song Black Sheep means one thing, but the reason why I chose this as a title track is kind of what we were talking about before. Like, I've always felt a little bit different since I was a kid, and I wanted to get back to that. I wanted to get back to not caring and embracing the fact that I'm a bit of a black sheep and not running away from it and caring too much what people think about me, and like, you know, trying to be a voice for other people and making an album that I think, you know, the public will like, or that, you know, my label is asking me for. I wanted to make a record that I'm really proud of and that I feel accurately represents me at my core, and almost getting back to like I was when I was a kid. So that's what Black Sheep is as a title. And as the actual song, it was just something I went through, and, you know, about just like feeling really misunderstood. And what's really annoying about that is when you feel a certain way, and it's like when someone feels a certain way about you, it doesn't matter what you say, like it just, their mind is made up, you know? So it's once you get kind of dubbed as different in the Black Sheep, it's like no matter what you say, like that's just how they're going to perceive you. So it was kind of just like, yeah, that song was about that. It was about a bit of a dark spot in my life that I went through, but I'm good now. But what's great is when you listen to, like, for me, when I listen to songs that I wrote when I was in a bit of a darker headspace, it's almost like therapy, you know, like you relive it and you're like, oh, but I'm so much stronger now from that. And like that song helped me get through it, you know?
Yeah. Well, I mean, even the idea of like, if you call yourself a black sheep, like there's something to it that there's a flag in the ground of like, oh, I'm a black sheep. But in that moment, in the beginning stages where you don't know you're a black sheep, it's kind of a dark situation. You know, you don't fit in. You don't know what this is. You don't know if there's other black sheep, like on the other side of the fence or across the yard situation. But what you find out later on in life of, oh, there's other black sheeps, and I'm just a herd of sheep, and we're the thing. We're awesome. This is the deal. But yeah, there is a dark tonality to Black Sheep, just because of that. You know, there is this thing that you do feel alone. There's this loneliness to it, but there's also the flag in the ground where you make your stance and say, well, I'm proud to be a black sheep. There's a lot of layers to that idea of Black Sheep.
Yeah, I mean, even in terms of trying to come up with like cover art for this album, like, because I didn't know what side of that coin I wanted to show, you know, like whether it was like the proud or the kind of like darkness sort of. But the thing is, that's like, there are some songs on the album that have a little bit of like an edge to them, like Black Sheep or something that's a little bit showing a side of my personality maybe people didn't know existed, because I've always kind of, I guess, portrayed like a sunny, happy-go-lucky girl, but I'm, for the most part, it's true, but, you know, like I'm a human being and I'm not one way all the time.
Yeah.
So I didn't know what I wanted to show, but because of the fact that there's still songs on the album that are so happy and fun too, I didn't want to make it seem like it was like, I didn't want to misrepresent the album from the cover. So I actually I was really scratching my head as to what I wanted it to look like. And I don't think anyone's seen it yet because, you know, I haven't released the cover art, but basically the way that I saw it, it's like, what we were just saying, this album represents how I've always sort of felt a little bit different as far back as I can remember, but it's about trusting myself regardless and tapping back into my core to make something authentic. And then I asked myself, like, when are we at our most real and unfiltered? And the answer to that was, we are our truest selves before the world puts ideas of what we should be doing, what we should be feeling, you know, what people think about us. Before those thoughts are even in our heads, we're just kids, and we're so us. We're so pure. We're so true. It's just our core. It's who we are. So I wanted to find like an old picture of me when I was a kid and make that the cover. Like, that's what I wanted, because I thought it's like me getting back to that. So
yeah,
that's what it's
right.
Be.
Yeah, once a black sheep, always a black sheep. There's also I'm kind of realizing that there's a little bit of a duality I realize this, like, listening to the songs, because, I mean, the easiest thing to say, like, okay, well, there's Bubbles and then there's Loner, you know? Okay, well, here's the Bubbles personality, but, oh, she's a loner. Like, it's pulling teeth, hanging out. You want to flip the script, but you want to do a monologue. Speaking of Loner, I love the lines that fake conversations, why don't we all grab a drink? Fuck validation, it doesn't matter what they think. I love that. That's amazing. That's a great line. But there's duality within, like, a couple of tracks on this record, but the idea of even a black sheep, it encompasses that duality, right? Because it is that thing of, oh, there is a flag in the ground that I'm pretty proud. There's other black sheep somewhere, but, oh, I'm a black sheep. There's probably some other black sheep somewhere out there. So I feel like, I don't know if it was serendipitous, you really thought about it, you really dug into it, but it's just like, oh, well, here's the thread. Here's the common thread of Black Sheep, of duality and just even things that kind of counteract one another, but it encompasses of who you are. Did you go that far in the process, or was it just like, Black Sheep?
It's so interesting. It's so interesting to hear you say that, because like I was saying before, my approach with this album wasn't to overthink anything. I just wanted to make something. I wanted to make something that was so authentic and so honest, and let that be the cohesive thread, that be the common thread throughout everything. And hearing you kind of deduct that, what you just did from it, it shows that it worked, right? Because it's like, I wasn't faking anything. So you're picking up on a duality that really does exist, because I wasn't trying to hide anything, you know? So it's definitely true. I mean, there's days where I feel like Loner, like the song Loner, and there's days where I feel like Bubbles. It really depends. And by the way, sometimes Bubbles, I feel like that by myself, you know, sometimes it's both.
Right. You got a TikTok account. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. I get that, and I understand that. I get this impression every once in a while that, like, you're a poetic person. Like, for instance, like when I listen to High Note, for example, to me, there's a couple hooks in that song of, like, you're leaving on a high note, and it makes me feel like, oh, this is going to be like a good, feel-good thing. But then it's like the very last line of the song, it's time to say goodbye. And I think you mention it every once in a while. But then it leaves you, oh, this was like more than like just writing to the hook of a song. This is like poetically like a sadder song than what it was. Like, you just spun it. So I mean, you could do that in songwriting. You can spin a song and change it from where it was, but there's something about writing more poetically that allows you to do something like that. Yeah, I think I'm really deliberate with my lyrics. I don't like to just phone it in. I don't like to just lead by the rhyme. I like my songs to have a theme and a conversational aspect to them, especially on this album. And I actually find my writing technique changes. It doesn't change, but it adapts, it grows all the time. And like, when you co-write, you can only tap into a certain part of you because you're in front of other people. So a lot of the times I write songs by myself and I bring them to my producers. Like the more intimate songs on this album, like Owe It All to You, I wrote that by myself because like that's a song lyrically that I could never write in front of someone else. And then that's like when you're at your most vulnerable, but that's like the most important songs to get out, you know? Right, and then you hear a song like Black Sheep too. Like I wrote that song by myself and, you know, I was really able to go a little darker than I probably would have if I just sat in a room with some people I just met or didn't know very well. You know, like I wouldn't feel comfortable to get that deep into my character in front of new people. So it really depends. So like High Note, the more conversational songs like High Note and Loner, and they're kind of funny. There's like a little element of like, you know, quirkiness, a little like sass, stuff like that. Like that's the side of me that I usually show. And it's definitely part of my character. And like, I wanted to have that on the album too. So it depends. I'm definitely, like I said, like very deliberate with my writing. And lately, what I find really therapeutic and really nice, what I've been doing is I open up my computer and I open up like a notes folder and I just write every single thing I'm feeling, like every single frustration, every single fear, every single anything, whatever I feel in that moment, whether it be happiness or anxiety or whatever it is, I write it all out. Like just like a stream of consciousness. And then I pick out words and pick out themes and try and like make that into a song so that it's like the most honest. And it's almost like painful. Like you don't want anyone to hear it. Like the thought of anyone hearing that, it's like, it's enough to make you sick, but you're like, no, that's why I have to have people hear it, you know? Right. And it's such a weird thing as a songwriter. Like I feel like there's like the Instagram side of us, like, or as an artist even, you know, out there's the Instagram side, but then like in your songs, it's like, word vomit of every like emotion like you've ever felt. You know, like there's a difference, which I don't know if it's easier to do that, like to do that in songs rather than share it to people like from face to face. But there is something about that vulnerability, like in a co-write situation or just even sharing that vulnerability at first. Like it's not an easy thing. You kind of work up to it, sharing that vulnerability. But it's an awkward thing. It's a stage like in the game of a creator.
No, it depends. I think that's why it's important when you find people you work well with and you connect with them, like you stick with them, because you need to build that trust. Like it's not going to happen overnight. Unless you're like the most honest, comfortable person to just go in and, you know, cry in front of a stranger, which I don't really know many people who are down to do that. You know, I think that it's important to like find people that you feel yourself with and that you could grow with them into that, you know, that you're like, okay, you're comfortable to cry in front of them. Like the first day that I ever met Zach and Roger, we wrote Loner, and they got to know a very kind of prominent side of my personality, which is that I'm like this antisocial type, you know. I'm an introvert who talks a lot. That's what I like to say.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's like they got to know that side of me, but then I wasn't willing to show them, you know, Black Sheep until a few sessions after that, you know, because that's like a really deeply personal song.
Right.
Yeah.
Especially with the idea of something like Black Sheep, that's a label, you know, that's a thing that you carry like your whole life and you held it in for forever. And then when you try to sit down, but there's something on the tip of your tongue. I don't know what that is. Like the music God saying, say it, say it, say it. And then you just say it. And then it becomes that thing. And especially working with Zach and Roger, it became the thing.
Yeah. And I think it's important to like, when you're feeling like something is scary, that's on the other side of fear is something beautiful. And like, that's what you need to share. That's what music is all about. And those are the songs that I've connected with. Forget songs I've written, just like songs in general from artists that I love and respect. My favorite to their songs are songs that make you feel a certain way in your gut, that raise the hair on your neck, that you just can't really explain why, but you know they're being honest and vulnerable. And like that's what I wanted to do with this record. It's something I'd never done before. I don't think I was ready, you know, and that's why this album is so important to me, because I did it. I really did it. And whatever happens with it, like I'm so proud of myself for going there.
Yeah. I have to say, when I was listening back, some of the back stuff, there was a dramatic change of sharing more of your emotional roller coaster, maybe of what you felt in a, I don't know, X amount of time, because it did feel more emotional. I mean, I feel like if you write a song like Owe It All and it becomes like, I don't know, like your I Will Always Love You song, like on the record, you know, it's about somebody, you owe somebody something. That is something that is like, it is emotional. And it is a little bit different of a track record for you.
No, for sure. Yeah, that song was something that was really hard for me to write. I was listening to Natural Woman, actually, by Carole King, and Aretha Franklin's version, of course. But that's one of my favorite songs ever written, because I think it so perfectly says such a complex emotion in such a simple way. And those are like the best songs, in my opinion. It's like you have 2 minutes to prove a point, to make your point, to get a thought, an idea, an emotion across. 2 to 3 minutes, right? And that's all you have. And you have to make an impression. And that song does it in such a way that like it captures such a complex emotion and feeling of gratitude and everything in those 3 minutes. Like there's just something about that song, you know, like when my soul was in the lost and found, you came along to claim it. Like my favorite line in that song, she goes, I didn't know what was wrong with me until your kiss helped me name it. And like, it's so beautiful and so simple. And I was like, oh, I need to write a song like that because I feel like that. I need to say it in my own words. So that's what that song's all about. I mean, it's pretty obvious. It's a love song, you know? So yeah, I mean, but it took me so long. It took me like a few weeks to like really refine those lyrics to where I was really happy with them. Because it's not, they seem simple on the surface, but like each word is very deliberate.
Right. Yeah, I wonder if you feel this way, because at least I do. Like love songs are pretty tough because you want to nail it. Yeah. And that's what most songs, especially like the commercial side of things, what the gym pop will hear, a lot of it is love songs. So it sounds easy, but to me, yeah, it is hard because you want to be so specific and you want to find a new way to say love, whatever that means in the context of the song. But yeah, especially if it truly is like a love song for a partner, to a partner, or just somebody that's important in your life, like those words become substantially a lot more important than, I don't know, a song that people just sit around for like 30 minutes and then that's it, you know?
Yeah.
You start second guessing yourself. You start wondering, oh, is this the word? Is this really how I feel? Is this how I want this character to feel?
Yeah, and there's a million ways to say, there's a million interpretations of the same emotion. And the best songs, in my opinion, are the ones that capture something so universally felt but so hard to articulate. And in a way that everybody can understand it. It's like, but it seems so specific when you listen, like when I listen to Oh It All, it seems so specific to my situation.
Right.
But I find, but it's still so relatable because so many people feel that exact same way. It's just like someone you've grown with, someone who's helped shape who you are, indirectly even, and you owe so much of who you are and what you've become and the strength that you now carry to that person. And I just needed to say thank you. Really, that's what that song is all about.
Forget is like one of my favorite tracks on the record because I always love when artists do this. Like they just kind of put that fuck you like song like on a record because that's something I've always wanted to do. Like I have that person in my head. It's JC Petty. He did this thing to me as a kid and I won't let it go. And I'm going to have a song one day of like, well, this is where I'm at, bitches. This is it.
Exactly.
And you got to put one on a record.
Exactly.
That's amazing.
I did. That was a good feeling. Yeah, definitely. The video was really funny to make too, though, because I didn't want it to be too serious. I had to poke fun at myself too, because like, it's you got to take it in stride. You can't let those people, take too much out of you for your whole life that you're carrying around that resentment and that grudge forever. So I wanted to just like have this song be the thing that let me let that go,
Totally. And this is also like one of those moments too of being, at least for me when I listen to the song, like between specifics and ambiguity, like I could say, oh, well, it's an industry thing, or it's actually like a person that said I wouldn't be able to do this, or it's this person in a partner relationship of like, oh, I wouldn't be able to do this. And it's more like woman empowerment. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so that's also the beauty about music, again, of like nailing that line between specific and ambiguity. And so like when you were writing this song, I feel like you would have to have something impression or this instance in your mind to make you come up with a song idea like this.
Yeah. For sure. It's very specific. This one is like the one that's like the most specific. It's like about one specific person I had in mind from the industry side of things. And then the second verse is like one specific person I had in mind in high school that wasn't very nice to me. Right. That was it. But I'm always hesitant to like actually define exactly what a song is about because it takes away the fun. Like I like people to have their own interpretations. Like you said, like good music, it should make you, you should be able to come up with 10 different things that it could be about, like, and I don't want to be so, I guess like vocal about exactly the story that goes behind a song, unless it's like really funny and can't be mistaken. But like, I like people to listen to music and have it mean something to them, and like have a situation that they've gone through and be like, oh, this is my song for that. Like I don't want to tell people how to feel. I just want them to feel it.
Yeah. And it's kind of lame as an artist too, if like you always have to explain like what a song is, because then you didn't do your job. Like if you have to tell people how to feel, like what the fuck is that? I always laugh at these podcasts that do that, or interviewers who are like, well, what is this? What do you do here? Like, what is that? What is that? What is it? Just listen to the song. Find something interesting about it and talk about it. Exactly. We just don't have that time anymore. We just don't have that thing. Maybe that's a gym pop thing. I don't know. I don't know if it's a attention span situation. Like people just don't know and they want to be told what it is. It's a weird dichotomy of like where we're at and how people consume music or even art or TV.
Totally. And I think also it has to do with the quality of lyrics now. Like it's just, there's some people that definitely still take it seriously as like an art form and really see themselves as writers first and like, look at their lyrics as almost a poetry like it used to be back in the day. Like you look at the music and from like the 60s and 70s and like we were talking about before, like Leonard Cohen, Bob Dylan, and like there's no one that even aspires to be close, because it's like, oh, no one could do it better than they can. But like those, I don't know. I feel like a lot of music today, there's some amazing music today. I'm not like trying to, say anything bad about there's amazing artists out there today for sure that like are still thinking about this. But for the most part, like generic stuff, it's like I don't even know why people need any explanation. Just listen to the song. It couldn't be more straightforward, you know?
Right. Yeah. All right, folks, you just listened to the entire conversation to get to know Nikki Yanofsky. And of course, we talked about that new record. It's not Black Sheep. I'm sorry. Things change. Get over it. Turn down the sound. This is where we're at. The record is out. Go enjoy it. Go give her a follow at unofficialnikki. Go to her website, officialnikki.com, for all updates and, of course, links to the music videos, everything that's kind of popping. Go check it out, even those tour dates. And that's it for us on this episode. Give us a follow at Unofficial Brandon or SMI Podcast on all those social platforms. Be in touch. Go to smipodcast.com. Drop us a line through email. Let us know. You guys want us to take a little break? I kind of feel like I need to take a little break just so I can get ready for moving and stuff. I don't know. We'll figure some shiz out. But besides that, if this episode meant something to you, think somebody else can kind of get something out of it, all I ever ask, just share it with a friend. Also, go check out the American Songwriter Podcast Network. All right, folks, that's it from me. Stay safe out there. Put on your mask. Happy surviving.